Have you ever wondered if the exact thing that made you fall in love with your partner is the very thing that's secretly destroying your relationship?
That is such a great question to start with.
Right, because I mean, we are entirely conditioned by, you know, movies, music, centuries of literature to believe that finding your soulmate is just, well, it's the definitive finish line.
Yeah, the screen fades to black after that big kiss in the rain.
Exactly. And we just subconsciously wire our brains to assume that the rest of it is totally effortless. But today's source material is this fascinating piece titled From Soulmates to Real Partners. And it argues that this whole soulmate concept isn't a romantic victory at all.
Not at all.
It's actually a psychological trap. So, okay, let's unpack this. We're going on a deep dive today to explore a really radical, paradigm shifting question. What if a soulmate is something you become rather than something you simply find?
It is a massive shift in how we approach intimacy. And I think it's important to say right off the bat, if you value deep connection, if you genuinely want an alignment of, heart, mind, and values, that desire is incredibly healthy.
Oh, absolutely. You aren't looking for just a breeze through superficial dynamic.
Right. The danger, however, lurks in how our brains process that desire. We have this tendency to put a partner on an impossible pedestal. It's a cognitive shortcut. The source refers to as romantic idealization.
Okay, let's actually define that because romantic idealization kind of sounds like a polite way of saying we're completely delusional.
Well, I mean, in a way, we are. At its core, romantic idealization is this deeply held, often subconscious belief that if you truly belong together, the relationship just shouldn't require hard work.
It should just flow perfectly.
Exactly. The brain loves efficiency. It wants the reward of deep, unwavering security without the cognitive load of navigating conflict. So we construct a fantasy.
We convince ourselves that the right partner will magically anticipate our needs, right? Like without us ever having to endure the vulnerability of actually asking for what we want.
Precisely. We believe that simply existing in the same space will be this state of perpetual ease.
Which I have to admit sounds like an absolute dream on paper.
It really does.
But when you look at how human beings actually function, I was thinking about this, and believing a soulmate requires no work it's like buying the most expensive, technologically advanced pair of running shoes on the market and assuming they're going to effortlessly run a marathon for you.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
The shoes are just the potential. They aren't the action.
Right. You go to the specialized running store, they put you on a treadmill, they analyze your gait, and you spend a small fortune to find the exact scientifically perfect fit for your arches.
And those shoes are undeniably incredible. They are the one.
Yes. But the shoes do not run the race. You still have to wake up at 5 in the morning, lace them up, face the freezing cold, and physically put in the miles. The perfect shoes just make you capable of running the race together without, getting injured.
And if your expectation is that the shoes will do the running for you, your brain is going to experience a severe crash of cognitive dissonance the moment your lungs start burning.
You'll be like, wait, this hurts. These must be the wrong shoes.
Exactly. And this is why the source anchors its entire philosophy on a very specific contrast. It points out that romantic love is like a sunrise. It's visually stunning, it's energizing, and crucially, it requires zero effort from you.
It just happens to you. You stand there and consume the beauty.
Right. But you can't live in a sunrise.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Lasting partnership, the text argues, is not a sunrise. It is a steady, well-built home. And a home requires an architectural blueprint, pouring a concrete foundation, and endless, highly unromantic daily maintenance.
Placed in that context, the sunrise is just the weather occurring outside the house you're building. I really want to pull on that thread of the well-built home because it immediately makes me question the foundational blueprint most of us are using. There is a phrase that has dominated romantic culture for, decades. We all know it. You complete me.
Oh, yes. The classic line.
But if a long-term relationship is a home, and a home takes two independent builders working side by side to raise a roof, isn't the concept of completion actually a terrible architectural plan?
What's fascinating here is how fundamentally unstable that idea really is. When we lean into the imagery of you complete me, it wraps us in this warm, romantic feeling.
It sounds so good in a movie.
It does. But structurally, it creates immense suffocating pressure on the other person. You're effectively declaring that your wholeness, your basic psychological integrity as a human being, is entirely dependent on them.
You're making them the load-bearing wall of your own identity.
Yes, exactly. And the shadow side of that dynamic is a profound underlying anxiety. If your partner is the missing half that makes you whole, then the unspoken fear running in the background of your mind 24/7 is, if I lose you, I cease to exist.
I call apart.
Right. That fear breeds control, jealousy, and a hypervigilance that eventually just exhausts both people.
Yeah.
So the paradigm shift the text demands is moving away from completing and toward complementing.
There's a massive psychological difference between those two words.
A world of difference.
Yeah.
Complementing is the synergy of two whole, structurally sound individuals choosing to collaborate. It's not two broken halves desperately trying to form a single circle.
It's two complete circles overlapping to create something much stronger, right?
Yes, something much more expansive than either could build alone.
But, dismantling that pedestal is incredibly difficult when the fantasy feels so good.
Yeah.
And the source actually forces us to confront this by looking at what we secretly expect from our partners. It asks us these reality check questions.
Which are so confronting, honestly.
They really are. The first one asks us to identify what we idealize about our partner. And the one that stands out to me is this silent expectation of endless emotional availability. We basically want our partner to be an infinite battery.
We completely project this superhuman capacity onto them. I
Yeah.
mean, early in a relationship, everyone is on their best behavior, adrenaline is high, and your partner seems to have endless patience.
Right, and your brain logs that as their permanent baseline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when year 3 rolls around and they snap at you because they had a brutal, depleting day at work, your threat response system just goes into overdrive.
Because the pedestal just cracked. And instead of thinking, oh, they're just exhausted, you panic and think, the relationship is broken, they don't love me anymore.
You mistake a normal fluctuation in their humanity for a fatal flaw in the relationship. That is why acknowledging your idealization is so vital. It bridges the gap between the romantic fiction you wrote in your head and the actual breathing human being sitting on your couch.
Because they're not a two-dimensional character designed solely to soothe your anxieties.
Right, they get tired, they get irritable.
Which brings up the second question from the source, which gets into a really uncomfortable truth about how we view friction. The question is, what do I imagine an ideal relationship would never have?
That's a big one.
It is. There is this deeply ingrained belief that a true soulmate dynamic shouldn't have any serious conflict. We operate under the delusion that if we pick the right person, we would never have massive misunderstandings or periods where we feel completely disconnected.
We view those seasons as red flags. When a couple has a recurring argument over something highly charged like how to manage the budget or how to discipline the kids or even just feeling like passing ships in the night during a busy season, the idealized brain interprets that friction as failure.
It whispers, if you were truly meant to be, this wouldn't be so hard.
Exactly.
Wait, I'm going to push back on that a little bit. Because aren't some of those things actual red flags? Like if you are constantly arguing about fundamental values, shouldn't you be a little worried?
Well, it depends entirely on the nature of the argument. The text clarifies that healthy, thriving couples absolutely have misunderstandings. They have periods of exhaustion. They argue over finances. The differentiator is never the absence of rupture. It is the presence of repair.
Oh, that's good. The presence of repair.
Right. A red flag is a refusal to repair. Normal friction is just the sound of two different human experiences rubbing against each other. When we expect a relationship to be devoid of conflict, we're basically demanding that our partner erase their own distinct personality and merge entirely into ours.
We want a clone, not a partner.
Exactly.
And that leads to the third question, which is the hardest pivot the source asks us to make. It turns the spotlight away from the partner's flaws and points it directly at us, asking, what am I willing to grow into?
That is where the passive consumption of romance ends and the active creation of partnership begins. It forces you to abandon the waiting game.
Instead of sitting back, arms crossed, waiting for this perfect match to seamlessly accommodate your life.
Yes. You have to ask yourself what skills you're actually lacking. How do you handle your own emotional regulation when things get tense? Are you willing to learn how to communicate without defensiveness?
Okay, I understand the theory of this. Internally recognizing that I am projecting an impossible fantasy onto my partner makes total sense. But how do you translate that into actual dialogue?
That's the tricky part.
Because if I walk up to my partner while they're cooking dinner and just announce, hey, I just realized my expectations of you are completely delusional, that's probably going to trigger a massive defensive wall.
Oh, it would almost certainly feel like an ambush.
Really?
To prevent that, the text outlines a highly structured conversation framework. It's designed to lower the temperature in the room by focusing on the past and the abstract, rather than attacking the present reality.
How does that actually work in practice? Like, what is the entry point for that conversation?
You start by examining history. The first question in the framework asks each of you to independently write down a few words or phrases describing what you expected partnership to feel like before you ever met.
Oh, interesting.
Right. What was the blueprint you brought into this? Then you come together and compare notes on what parts of those childhood or young adult fantasies actually materialized and what parts were wildly different.
That is remarkably clever. By talking about your past expectations, you bypass the brain's amygdala, the threat center.
Exactly.
You aren't saying you are failing me right now. You are saying, here is the invisible script I was handed by society, and here's where reality went off script. It completely removes blame from the equation.
It creates a zone of psychological safety.
Hmm.
And you really need that safety for the next step of the conversation, which is question 2.
Yeah.
Identifying what you need to accept about your partner that doesn't match your original ideal.
Wait, I have to stop you there again. Because if I am just blindly accepting that my partner is, say, constantly putting work first, or they're emotionally withdrawn, at what point does accepting their humanity become a convenient excuse for them being a neglectful partner? Aren't I just settling for bad behavior?
That is a crucial distinction to make, and I'm glad you brought it up. Acceptance in this context is not a synonym for tolerating abuse, neglect, or a total lack of effort.
Okay.
It's about gaining clarity on fundamental personality traits and competing priorities. For example, your romantic ideal might have been a partner who wants to spend every free weekend exploring the city with you. But the reality is, you married an introvert who desperately needs Saturday mornings in absolute silence to recharge from their work week.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Accepting that isn't settling. It is acknowledging their neurological reality. You are accepting that their need for rest is just as valid as your need for adventure.
It's recognizing that you are not the only protagonist in the story. They have their own entirely separate plotline.
Exactly. And once you clear away the resentment of unmet ideals, you can move to the final piece of the framework, question 3. Deciding what you want to protect about your love story.
Oh, I like that. What do we protect?
Yes. You look at your shared life and identify the traditions, the unique inside jokes, the specific ways you support each other, and you declare those things non-negotiable. You build a fence around the parts of your love story that are genuinely yours.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because when you string those pieces together, analyzing past expectations, accepting present realities, and protecting your shared foundation, it fundamentally alters the posture of the relationship.
It completely shifts the dynamic.
You stop standing face to face evaluating each other with this anxious, critical lens of, is this working? Instead, you turn side by side, look at the life you're building, and ask an empowered question. How are we going to make this work?
If we connect that to the bigger picture, though, building a strong foundation doesn't mean the house is finished.
Right, a foundation doesn't keep the rain out.
Exactly. You need a roof, you need plumbing, and you need to ensure the pipes don't freeze in the winter. Big philosophical conversations are the foundation. But the survival of the relationship depends entirely on the mundane, daily grind.
The Tuesday nights, the exhausted Thursday mornings, that is where a relationship actually lives or dies.
Yes, absolutely.
And the source doesn't leave us hanging here. It provides actionable tools to navigate that daily grind. The most impactful one, to me at least, is the expectation check-in.
It's incredibly straightforward, yet it targets one of the most destructive forces in any relationship. The invisible mental debt ledger.
Oh, the ledger.
Yes. The check-in is a dedicated 10 minutes once a week where you ask 2 specific questions. First, what did I expect to happen this week that didn't? And second, what is something you did that positively surprised me?
Let's dig into that first question, because that mental debt ledger is so real. We walk around carrying these unspoken expectations. He should know the dishwasher needs emptying. She should know I need an hour to decompress after that meeting.
Right.
And when they fail to read our minds, we add a mark to their ledger.
And resentment thrives in that dark space of unspoken expectations. We are essentially holding our partners accountable for violating a contract they never actually signed, and in many cases, never even knew existed.
Which is so unfair when you say it out loud.
It is. The brilliance of the 10-minute check-in is that it forces you to speak the expectation aloud. The goal isn't necessarily to demand they fix it immediately. The psychological payoff is mere awareness.
Because the moment you say, I expected you to take the lead on planning the weekend and it didn't happen, you rob the resentment of its power.
Exactly.
If you don't say it, that minor disappointment just festers. It mutates in your head until you are convinced they don't care about you at all, and then 3 weeks later, you absolutely explode over someone leaving a coffee mug on the counter.
Right, because you're dealing with the actual data now, rather than the catastrophic story your brain spun from the data.
There is another cognitive tool the source offers, specifically for the individual to use in real time when those disappointments hit. It's called the Humans Not Ideals Reminder.
I love this one.
It's so simple. In the exact moment your partner lets you down, you're supposed to pause and silently repeat to yourself, I am not married to a fantasy. I am married to a human.
It functions as a circuit breaker for what psychologists call the fundamental attribution error.
Wait, explain how that works in this context. What is that error?
So, the fundamental attribution error is a cognitive bias, where we attribute our own mistakes to situational factors, but we attribute other people's mistakes to deep character flaws.
Oh, okay.
If you snap at your partner, you justify it by saying, I just had a terrible day, I'm stressed. But if your partner snaps at you, your brain immediately concludes they're a fundamentally selfish and impatient person.
We give ourselves the grace of context, but we judge them against the standard of perfection.
Precisely. The humans not ideals mantra interrupts that bias. When your partner drops the ball, your threat response wants to escalate it to an existential crisis about their character. Reminding yourself of their basic humanity softens the judgment.
But it doesn't mean the problem disappears, right?
No, not at all. If they forgot to pay the electric bill, you still have to solve the problem of the electric bill. But it shifts the focus from my partner is defective to my human partner made an error we need to fix.
It brings the temperature in the room back down to baseline.
Exactly.
And that leads to the final practical tool, which addresses how we actually communicate care. We're all generally aware of the concept of love languages, acts of service, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and physical touch. But the source asks us to do an alignment experiment. We have to move away from the demand that our partner just naturally gets us.
We have to abandon the telepathy fantasy.
The telepathy fantasy, yes.
From a very young age, our survival depended on a caregiver, anticipating our needs before we could speak. We project that infantile desire onto our romantic partners. We think, if they truly love me, they will just know what I need without me asking.
Which is a setup for massive failure. So the experiment asks you to explicitly share your top 2 love languages with your partner and then intentionally commit to performing one small act per week that speaks their language, not yours.
That is the trap so many couples fall into. We naturally express love in the way we prefer to receive it.
Right.
If your primary language is physical touch, but your partner's is acts of service, you might try to soothe them after a stressful day by giving them a long hug.
Meanwhile, they are looking over your shoulder at a sink full of dirty dishes, feeling completely overwhelmed, thinking, I don't need a hug right now, I need you to load the dishwasher.
Exactly. You are speaking French to someone who only understands German, and then getting frustrated when they don't feel loved. You have to learn their specific operational manual.
So, what does this all mean? When you combine all these concepts, dismantling the pressure to complete each other, unpacking past expectations, checking in weekly to clear the mental ledger, and learning to speak each other's language, you arrive at the ultimate, profound thesis of the source material. True partnership is not the absence of friction. It is the consistent presence of care, repair, and daily intention.
Which means we have to accept something that sounds tragic at first but is actually liberating. The romance is going to fade.
It has to fade.
It is biologically and psychologically designed to fade. The fading of that initial breathless infatuation isn't a symptom of failure. It's a necessary clearing out. It burns off the fog of idealization to make room for something far more durable. Mutual respect, a shared history of overcoming obstacles, and the deep, abiding security of knowing you are in the trenches with someone who will not abandon you when you are difficult to love.
We don't want to just leave you with behavioral theory today. We want you to actually put this into practice. If you are listening to this deep dive right now, especially if you are listening with your partner, we have an exercise for you to do today. Turn to each other and ask 2 questions.
It's a great exercise.
First, what is one thing you genuinely love about the romantic soulmate idea you shared early on? Honor the beauty of that initial sunrise. Then ask, what is one thing we are learning now about each other that is wildly different from what we originally imagined?
And allow yourselves to look at the gap between the fantasy and the reality without any judgment. Just observe it. And once you have that conversation, commit to implementing just one small practice this week.
You don't need to overhaul your entire dynamic overnight.
No, please don't try to. Decide to do the 10-minute expectation check-in on Sunday. Or agree to use the humans not ideal circuit breaker the next time a minor frustration occurs. Or pick one specific action that speaks directly to your partner's love language.
One small brick at a time builds the foundation.
But I want to leave you with a broader thought to reflect on, something that extends far beyond romance. We have spent this entire discussion focusing on marriages and long-term romantic partners. But if the ultimate goal of true intimacy isn't to locate a flawless, ready-made soulmate, but rather to actively build a dynamic of care, repair, and grace, how does that change the way you view all the other relationships in your life?
Oh, that's really interesting.
Think about your platonic friendships. Think about your family dynamics. Does holding on to an idealized version of a perfect friend or a perfect parent actually rob you of the opportunity to truly know the beautifully complex, inherently flawed human being standing right in front of you?
That is a phenomenal question to sit with. Because demanding a flawless script doesn't just fracture marriages, it isolates us from everyone we care about. It all ties back to the illusion of the movie ending. If you freeze the frame right at the triumphant kiss in the rain, you miss out on the rest of their lives. You miss the messy, frustrating, incredibly beautiful reality of two people figuring out how to build a home together. You don't have to be perfect to be partners. You just have to be willing to do the work of growing together. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.